Chapter 1, Production versus Sandbox. I wonder how many of us keep saying that we want a better life, but we keep living like this is a practice round, like it's a sandbox. We try something for 2 days, life gets loud, and we fold. We miss one morning and call it proof it doesn't work. We hit resistance and start negotiating like we're owed something. We say that we want discipline, but we're allergic to discomfort. We say we want peace, but we keep feeding the noise. We say we want change, but we keep protecting the same patterns. You may be asking, Brian, what are you talking about? Here it is. Sandbox life feels possible because nothing is being tested. No real pressure, no real consequences. But production? Production is bills. Production is conflict. Production is fatigue. Production is temptation. Production is when life hits you at the same time from 5 directions and you still got to execute. And that's where people get exposed. Not because they're weak, but because their system is unstable. Most people don't have life problems. They have system problems. They built a life that only works when they feel good. So when pressure shows up, they crash. They call it overwhelmed. Nah, you're overloaded because your environment is messy. Let me say it like the IT guy that I am. If your mornings are chaos, your startup sequence is broken. If your phone owns your attention, you have no firewall. If everybody can interrupt you, you have no access control. If you keep starting over, you never built a system that holds. Production doesn't care about your mood. Production cares about uptime. So here's today's build. Stability, then stability again. Clarity, then clarity again. Boundaries, enforced under pressure, because that's the difference. Some people get inspired, other people get rebuilt. Now the 1% move. Pick one place you crash the most. Morning, food, phone, attitude, work. And make one change that makes failure harder. Not a whole new life, a stability patch. Move the phone away from the bed. Write tomorrow's first task tonight. Kill one app for 24 hours. Block one time window and protect it like uptime matters. Do that today because you don't need more motivation. You need a build that holds when life gets loud. If it can't run under pressure, it doesn't belong in your life. Chapter 2. The log file doesn't lie. How many times have you said, man, I don't know what's wrong with me, while doing the same thing over and over again? Same spiral, same excuses, same I'll start tomorrow. And we keep calling this mysterious. It's not mysterious. Your life has receipts. Here's the problem. Most people try to debug themselves off vibes. I feel off. I feel unmotivated. I feel overwhelmed. Okay, that's great, but feelings are noisy. They spike. They drop. They lie to you. Patterns don't. Patterns are logs. And if you know anything about systems, you already know this. When something keeps breaking, you don't guess. You check the logs. Because the logs tell the truth about what's happening when nobody's watching. So let's make this plan. If you always reach for your phone the second that you feel pressure, that's a log. If you always procrastinate right before the hard task, that's a log. If you always get irritated when you're hungry or tired, that's a log. If you keep accidentally doing the same dumb things that cost you, that's a log. And we call it stress. But stress isn't the enemy. Stress is actually just a load test. Pressure doesn't create who you are. Pressure reveals what your system is already running. That's why you can't keep saying, that's just how I am. Nope. That's just the script that you keep executing. And listen, this is actually amazing news because once you can see the script, you can flip it. So here's the 1% move. Super simple, no essay journaling. For the next 3 days, every time you feel yourself about to do the thing you regret, scroll, snack, snap, shut down, procrastinate, whatever your thing is, open notes and type 4 words, whatever that app is on your phone, open something. Type these words: trigger, action, payoff, cost. That's it. Stress, scroll, numb, lost hour. Criticism, shut down, control, distance. Bored, snack, comfort, sluggish. Then on day 4, look for the pattern. What's the most common trigger? There's your weakness. And you install one guardrail, not a personality change, a system change. Move the phone, block the app, set a 10-minute timer and start ugly. Take a walk before you respond. Eat before you get sharp with people. Small patch, big stability. Because your next breakthrough isn't in a motivational quote. It's in the patterns that you keep executing. If you won't read the logs, you're going to keep calling bugs personality. Chapter 3. Default settings are not neutral. How much of your day do you actually choose? And how much of it is just runs? You wake up, grab the phone, scroll before your feet hit the floor, you get stressed, you snack, you avoid hard things, and you shrug and call it life. But it's not life. We call those defaults. Here's the line that you need to hear. Default settings are not neutral. They weren't designed to help you. They were installed by convenience, by habits, by past pains, by dopamine, by culture. And once they're installed, they run automatically. Nobody wakes up and decides to be distracted. Nobody plans to waste an hour scrolling. Nobody schedules self-sabotage. It just happens because the system is on autopilot. Let me say it like a systems guy. If you don't choose your defaults, life will choose them for you. And life does not care if they work. Look at the patterns. Wake up, phone. Stress, escape. Conflict, avoid or explode. Boredom, entertainment. Those aren't personality traits. Those are startup programs. And this is why motivation keeps failing you. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your defaults. Motivation is temporary. Defaults are permanent until you change them. Discipline isn't hype. It's not intensity. Discipline is deciding once what you'll do so you don't have to decide again under pressure. That's it. So here's the 1% move. Simple, surgical. Do one default swap for 24 hours, just one. If your default is wake up, go to the phone, swap it with wake up, have some water, write down the top task that you've got today. Just that one. If your default is when you're stressed out, you start scrolling, swap it with when you're stressed out, set a 2-minute timer and start jotting down the things that you know you got to do. If your default is a conflict and you get super defensive, swap it with when you see conflict, pause, ask one question, just one. You're not adding effort. You're replacing the automatic behavior with one that actually serves you. And once you feel what it's like to run a day on purpose, you won't want to go back because clarity isn't mystical, it's mechanical. And freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. It comes from designing your defaults so your life runs clean even when you're tired. You are not stuck. You're just running defaults you never chose. Chapter 4. Latency isn't laziness. When things slow down, what's the first conclusion? That something's wrong, that discipline slipped, that motivation disappeared. Progress stalls and the labels show up fast. Lazy, stuck, off track. But labels don't explain much. In systems, slowness already has a name: latency. Latency doesn't mean failure. It means that the system is taking longer to respond because something is in the way. Too much load, too many processes, not enough margin. If you've ever watched a system crawl, and I'm sure you have, you know how this works. CPU is pegged, memory is stretched thin, everything in Task Manager is at 99%. Background tasks still running long after they stop being useful. Requests are stacking up faster than they can be handled. Nothing is broken, everything is just really crowded. Now, zoom out. Sleep gets chipped away a little at a time. Conversations stay unfinished. Decisions stay open. Notifications keep firing. Attention keeps getting pulled in 5 directions at once. Each thing feels small, manageable, temporary, until it's not. Then everything feels heavy. Simple tasks are going to take longer. Momentum disappears. And the instinct is to push, add hours, add pressure, add urgency. But pressure doesn't clear congestion, it makes it worse. Speed doesn't come from trying harder, it comes from having room. That's the part most people are going to miss. What looks like a motivation problem is actually a capacity problem. When the system is full, nothing moves cleanly. When margins return, movement comes back without a fight. That's why forcing output on an overloaded system never lasts. It burns hot, then melts down. The fix isn't intensity, it's inspection. Look at what's running in the background. Look at what's still open. Look at what keeps interrupting without permission. That's where the drag lives. So the move is simple. One source of load removed, one buffer added. Not a reset, not a reinvention, just space. Because when congestion drops, things start moving again. Not because motivation showed up, because the system could finally breathe. If progress feels slow, don't push harder, reduce the load. Chapter 5, The 1% Firewall. How often does a day fall apart not because of one big thing, but because of 50 small things? A text here, an email there, a notification, a thought that turns into 2 hours of scrolling, a conversation that goes longer than it should. It's nothing dramatic, it's nothing evil, it's just constant interruptions. And by the end of the day, focus is gone and there's confusion about where all the time went. In systems, the problem is obvious. Anything that runs in production has rules about what gets in and when. Not everything is allowed to talk to everything. Not every request gets processed immediately. Some traffic is delayed, some is going to get ignored. Some never even makes it past the gate. That's not discipline, that is by design. Now, look at how most days actually run. Every notification has equal priority. Every request feels hot. Every emotion gets airtime. Every distraction gets a vote. So attention stays fragmented and nothing important gets enough uninterrupted time to actually finish it. That's not a motivation problem, it's an access problem. When everything can interrupt everything, focus never takes place. This is where discipline gets misunderstood. Discipline isn't forcing yourself to do hard things, it's deciding in advance what won't be allowed to interrupt them. That's a firewall. A firewall isn't emotional. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't explain itself. It enforces rules so the system can keep running. And the rules don't have to be dramatic. They just have to be consistent. No phone during the first hour of the day. No notifications during focused work. No responding to messages that don't require a response. No important decisions made when I'm tired. Those aren't personality traits, these are configuration settings. Most people wait until they're overwhelmed and then they try to power through. Systems do not work that way. Protection comes first, output comes second. Without rules, everything feels urgent. With rules, priority becomes obvious. So the 1% move here is simple. Install one rule that protects your attention. One block, one limit, one window where interruption is not allowed. Not forever, not everywhere, just one place where focus is a non-negotiable. Because once interruption drops, clarity is going to start showing up without effort in ways you've never seen before. Not because discipline suddenly got stronger, it's because the system stopped getting hit from every direction. Discipline is not trying harder. It's deciding what's allowed to interrupt you. Chapter 6, Permissions and Access Control. Think about how decisions actually get made on a normal day. A thought pops up and suddenly it matters. An emotion shows up and it starts steering everything. A message comes in and everything comes to a halt. Someone else's urgency jumps the line. Nothing is exploding, nothing obviously just crazy wrong. Things just drift. That's usually not a discipline issue. This is almost always a permissions issue. In systems, not everything gets the same level of access. Some things can look, some things can suggest. Very few things are allowed to change direction. That's not control for control's sake. That's how systems stay stable. Now, look at how the internal stuff shows up. Fatigue has an opinion. Emotion wants a say. Fear speaks up early and confidently. Confidence makes a strong case. And without noticing it, everything gets a seat at the table. So decisions, they just start wobbling. Plans get adjusted midstream. Momentum fades, and it's hard to explain why. It's not because the inputs are bad, it's because none of them were given a role. In a well run system, most inputs are allowed to surface, they're not just allowed to decide. Thoughts can pass through without becoming commands. Emotions can register without taking the wheel. Opinions can be heard without setting the direction. That separation is what keeps things from spiraling under pressure. Admin access is limited in production environments because mistakes at that level ripple everywhere. The same thing applies here. When everything has permission to decide, nothing decides well. When access is clear, decisions settle. When decisions settle, execution becomes steady. And when execution becomes steady, progress compounds without drama, usually quickly. The shift isn't dramatic, it's simply deciding ahead of time what gets decision level access and what gets acknowledged and released. Once roles are clear, inputs stop competing, and the system stops second guessing itself. Not everything gets admin access. Decide what's allowed to steer in your life. Chapter 7, Patch Management. How many things in life are fine for now, but quietly getting worse? Nothing's broken, nothing's urgent, it's just off. Sleep is drifting a little bit later, focus slipping a little bit faster, standards lowering just a little bit at a time. Maybe your tone is changing in your conversations, maybe your habits are getting sloppy, but not enough to panic. So it gets ignored. In systems, that pattern is very familiar. Small bugs start showing up, warnings get logged, updates get postponed. Everything still runs, so nothing gets fixed. That's patch management, or more accurately, the lack of it. Most failures don't start with a crash. They start with something small that was visible early and tolerated for too long. A minor performance issue, a security update skipped, a workaround that's become permanent. Over time, the system doesn't just slow down, it becomes fragile. Now, map that to real life. Sleep slips 30 minutes, then an hour, then I'll catch up later. Your diet loosens up a little bit, then a little bit more, then it's just how things are. Your focus starts eroding, your standards soften, your boundaries start blurring. Nothing dramatic happens until it does. That's the cost of deferred maintenance. Small issues compound quietly. Fixes get harder. Consequences get louder. Most breakdowns weren't sudden, they were predictable. The signals were there early, they just didn't feel urgent at the time. This is why patch management matters. Not because everything needs fixing, but because small fixes are cheap. They don't require willpower, they don't require motivation, they don't require a reset, they require attention. And in healthy systems, patches are boring, or routine, or scheduled. They get applied early so nothing has a chance to escalate. The same principle works here. A small correction made early prevents a big correction later. So the 1% move here is simple. Pick one thing that's slightly off. Not broken, just something that you know is drifting. You know what it is. And patch it. Earlier bedtime? Maybe tighter boundaries? Cleaner inputs? Stronger standards? No speeches, no overall, just maintenance. Just maintenance. Because systems don't stay healthy by accident. They stay healthy because someone keeps them that way. Fix small things early, or big things will fix you later. Chapter 8, Kill the Background Apps. How often does a day feel exhausting even when not that much actually happened? There weren't big problems, there were no major fires, you just feel drained. In systems, that usually points to one thing: background processes. Apps running that don't need to be running. Tasks consuming resources without producing anything useful. There's stuff quietly just eating memory and attention all day long. Quietly, but it's there. Nothing crashes, things just feel slow. Now look at how most days actually do run. Old conversations replaying in the background, You have unresolved decisions staying open, anxiety checking in every few minutes, of course. Comparison is humming quietly underneath everything else. That one thing you keep avoiding sitting there, pulling energy. None of it demands attention outright. It just never shuts off. So focus drops. Patience starts getting thinner. It starts affecting you personally. Simple tasks start feeling heavier than they actually should. And it's confusing because nothing looks wrong. That's the trick with background apps. They don't break the system, they consume it. In production environments, this is easy to spot. If memory keeps getting eaten, you don't optimize the main task, you kill what's running unnecessarily first. Now, just apply that here. Not every thought needs to be entertained. Not every worry needs to stay open. Not every emotional loop needs to keep playing over in your head again and again. Some things just need to be closed. Background anxiety, lingering resentment, unfinished decisions, mental tabs left open for days. They all cost something. And the longer they run, the more normal the drain feels. That's why rest doesn't always help. Sleep doesn't fix a system that wakes up and immediately reloads the same background tasks. This is when clarity starts to return. Not by adding more effort, not by grinding harder, but by shutting things down. One app, one loop, one unresolved thing, just bring it to a close. A decision made. Maybe you go finish a conversation that's just eating at you. A boundary enforced. A worry that's written down and parked. Not everything at once here. Just one thing that's been quietly running too long. Because when background apps close, capacity is going to come back quickly. Your focus will sharpen, your energy will stabilize, the system starts responding again. Not because anything new was thrown in, but it's because something unnecessary was taken out. If everything feels heavy to you, check what's still running in the background. Chapter 9, Clean Architecture. A lot of life feels harder than it needs to be, not because of all of the complexities, but because of the way it's organized. It's messy. We have too many priorities. We got too many half decisions. We have too many things living in the same mental space that shouldn't really even be anywhere near each other. Nothing's broken, again, it's just cluttered. And in systems, this problem has a name. Bad architecture. We see it all the time. When everything is connected to everything, changes get risky. Failures spread a lot quicker. Simple fixes turn into massive full rebuilds. So good systems, they do something different. They separate concerns. Follow me. Each component has a role. Each process lives where it belongs. Inputs are routed intentionally. Outputs are predictable. Not fancy, just clean. Now, look at how most days are structured, again, if we break down our normal days. Work bleeds into rest. Stress starts bleeding into conversations. Phone time bleeds into everything. Unfinished thoughts are going to sit next to important decisions that you need to make. No boundaries between layers here, so everything feels heavy because everything is touching everything. This isn't a workload problem. Again, it's an architecture problem. Clean architecture is not about doing less here. It's about putting things in the right place. Decisions live in one layer. Emotions live in another layer. Execution lives somewhere else entirely. When those layers blur, emotion hijacks execution, and urgency is going to start rewriting every priority that you have. That's when people say that they feel scattered. In well-designed systems, clarity comes from separation. Input is going to be captured and not acted on immediately, just captured. Decisions are made once, not relitigated all day long. Execution happens inside protected space without constant interference. Nothing magical here, just structure. This is why boundaries matter, why firewalls exist, why permissions are defined. They keep layers from bleeding into each other. So our 1% move here in this chapter, pick one area where everything blends together. We all have them. Work and rest, planning and reacting, thinking and scrolling, emotion and decision making. Some of these things have got to be separated. Different time, different place, different rules. It won't be perfect, but you're going to be intentional, and that's what matters. Because when architecture is clean, Your entire life feels lighter without anything actually changing, really. The same effort produces more output. The same day feels calmer. The same problems feel a lot more manageable. Not because your motivation improved, but because you have a system that is making sense. Clarity is not going to come from doing less. It comes from cleaner structure. Chapter 10, Single Source of Truth. A lot of mental fatigue doesn't come from hard problems. It comes from contradicting information. Let me explain. One thought says go. Another says wait. One feeling says rest. A deadline says push. Advice pulls in 3 different directions. Nothing moves because nothing agrees. In systems, this problem is very obvious. When data lives in too many places, nothing can be trusted. Different dashboards show different numbers. Different teams argue about what's real. Decisions stall because nobody knows which source is correct. So mature systems solve this early. They establish a single source of truth, a database, if you will. One place where reality is defined. One reference point where decisions are made from. One version that's going to override opinions, noise, and all of the guesswork. And not because this thing is perfect either, but because it's consistent. It is a source of truth. Let's look at how decision making typically takes place. Emotion says one thing, logic says another, past experiences weigh in, your fear jumps in and offers its opinion, other people add their opinions because everybody's an expert. Everything gets equal airtime. So decisions get bounced. Of course they do. Plans get revised. Second guessing becomes constant. Not because clarity is missing, but because authority is. When there's no single source of truth, everything feels negotiable. That's exhausting. In clean systems, the truth is boring. It's predictable. It's settled. It doesn't change with mood. It doesn't change under pressure. It doesn't argue. It's just there. It just is. The same idea applies here. When values, priorities, and rules are pre-decided, daily decisions stop draining energy. Not every choice becomes a debate. Not every feeling becomes a directive of some kind. There's a reference point. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They want flexibility, but they haven't defined what's fixed. So everything stays open. And open loops are expensive. A single source of truth closes loops. It answers questions like, what matters most right now? What gets done even when it's uncomfortable? What doesn't change when emotions go up and down? Once those answers exist, decisions get much faster. Not easier, cleaner. So the 1% move is simple. Define one reference point, one short list, one written standard, or one set of rules that don't get renegotiated every single day. Sleep minimums, maybe. Work start times, like I will start work at this time no matter what. Non-negotiables. Decision filters. Nothing long, nothing poetic. This doesn't need to be a book, just something stable. Because when truth is centralized, energy comes roaring back like you would not believe. And it's not because your life got simpler, it's because the system just stopped arguing with itself. It has a source of truth. If everything feels debatable, you don't have a source of truth. Chapter 11, Graceful Degradation. Most people aren't going to quit because they planned on it. They quit because something went wrong and they didn't know what to do next. Maybe they had a bad night of sleep. Maybe they missed too many workouts in a row, a blown morning, an emotional day maybe. And suddenly the thought shows up, well, today's already done. In systems, this is known as a failure mode. When a system is designed to operate only at 100%, any disruption turns into a shutdown. One error is going to cause a massive cascade. One failure takes absolutely everything offline. Good systems, they don't work like that, thank goodness. They degrade peacefully. What does this mean? When load spikes, they slow down instead of crashing. When resources drop, they reduce features instead of quitting. When something fails, they stay online in a reduced state. Not perfect, but still running. Now, let's look at this as it pertains to habits, right? It's either all or nothing, perfect or pointless, on track or completely off. So when life hits, and it always will, your whole system will collapse. This isn't a lack of discipline, it's bad design overall. Graceful degradation is planning for imperfect days. It's knowing ahead of time what happens when things don't go as planned. Not quitting, not spiraling, just switching modes. You missed the workout? Do 10 minutes instead of 0. You'll blew the morning? Well, okay, protect your afternoon. Your energy's gone? Do the smallest version that just keeps the streak alive. Do something. The goal isn't intensity here, it's continuity. In production environments, uptime matters more than performance does. A system that's always online beats one that's occasionally perfect. The same principle applies in real life here. Progress compounds when systems stay running, even in reduced mode. Most people don't need more willpower, they need fewer failure points. They need less things to blow up their days. They need plans that assume bad days will happen. Because they're not an exception. They're part of the operating environment being life. When degradation is graceful, mistakes stop turning into exits. Momentum survives, and consistency stops depending on mood. If one bad day can take you out, your system is fragile. Chapter 12, Redundancy and Fallbacks. A lot of plans fail, not because they were bad, but because they only had one way to work. Only one routine, only one rigid schedule, only one source of energy, only one version of this day going right. And when that one thing breaks, everything halts. In systems, this is a fairly rookie mistake. Nothing critical runs on a single point of failure. No serious environment bets everything on one path holding. Power goes out, there's battery backup. Network drops, we have other switches, we have traffic reroutes. Primary fails, you have a failback that takes over. Not because failure is actually expected, but because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Now, let's look at how most people operate. One morning routine that assumes perfect sleep, right? Like you set up a morning routine assuming you get 8 hours of rock solid sleep the night before. What if you don't? One workout plan that assumes high energy. You're going to have days where you don't have high energy. Now what? One productivity system that assumes uninterrupted time. So when life hits, late night, sick kids, bad news, unexpected bills, unexpected stress, your plan collapses, and with it, so does any momentum. This isn't a discipline problem, it's a redundancy issue. Redundancy is not pessimism, it is realism. It's acknowledging the conditions change and designing for continuity anyway. In well-built systems, failbacks, they're not exciting, they're boring. They don't optimize for best case, they protect against worst case. Let's apply the same ideas here. Primary plan is a full workout, right? Fallback, walk and stretch for a couple of minutes. Your day's not done. If your primary plan was a deep work block, you wanted to focus for an hour and just be uninterrupted. If that gets blown up, do it again with 15 minutes of focused cleanup. Bounce back. Your primary plan is a perfect day. First of all, good luck. And then protect one non-negotiable. Nothing heroic, nothing dramatic, just another path that keeps things moving. This is how consistency actually compounds. Not by never missing, but by never fully stopping. When one path closes, another one is already defined. So the 1% move here, game changer. Identify one area that only works when everything goes right. Then design a fallback. Not later, not in the moment, now, when things are calm. There's a reason we don't go grocery shopping when we're hungry. This is the same situation. Because redundancy doesn't make systems weaker, it makes them resilient. And resilience is what keeps progress alive when conditions stop cooperating. If there's only one way forward, the system is fragile again. Chapter 13, Uptime over Optimization. A lot of momentum doesn't die because something went wrong. It dies because it wasn't perfect. The plan worked, but not cleanly. The day moved forward, but not efficiently. The effort counted, but it didn't feel optimal enough to respect. So it gets mentally discarded. I'll do it right tomorrow. I'll restart it when I can give it my best shot. I'll fix it once I have more time. That sounds reasonable on the surface, but in production systems, this is a deadly thought. Optimization is seductive. It promises elegance, efficiency, and the feeling of doing things the right way. But systems don't survive on elegance. They survive on uptime. A system that runs consistently at 70% creates far more value than one that occasionally hits 100% and then disappears for a few days at a time. Production doesn't reward perfection, it rewards availability. Now, look at how progress usually gets evaluated in real life. Was the workout intense enough? Was the focus deep enough? Was the routine followed exactly as planned? If not, the whole day gets mentally downgraded. And just like that, uptime is traded for optimization. Small wins get invalidated. Momentum gets interrupted, and consistency quietly resets because you're beating yourself up. Not because nothing happened, but because it didn't meet an internal standard that only exists in your head. In healthy systems, optimization is always secondary. First, the system stays online. Then we improve it. Uptime creates data. Data reveals patterns. Patterns make intelligent refinement possible. Without uptime, there's nothing to analyze, nothing to tune, nothing to improve. You're not optimizing a system at that point, you're just imagining one. This is how perfectionism actually kills progress. It doesn't look like quitting, it looks like waiting. Waiting for better energy, waiting for clearer focus, waiting for ideal conditions that almost never show up when you need them. So momentum keeps getting postponed, even though effort keeps getting spent. The 1% move here isn't dramatic. Prioritize uptime. Protect streaks instead of intensity. Show up even when output is lower than you'd like. Let the system run on imperfect days without trying to rescue it or restart it. Not forever, just long enough for consistency to compound, then we make it pretty. Because once uptime is stable, optimization stops being a trap and it actually starts becoming useful. Progress no longer depends on how the day feels anymore. It depends on whether your system stays online. And that's a much more reliable way to build something that lasts. Progress does not need perfection. It needs uptime. Chapter 14, Ship the System. You're not going to stall out because you lack information, okay? You're going to stall out because nothing ever crossed the line from intention into reality. Ideas stay clean when they never get tested. Plans feel very powerful when they never have to run. Frameworks look super impressive when they live quietly in a notes app. Everything stays theoretical, and theory is safe. You can think about changing your life without risking it. You can talk about optimizing without exposing what actually works. You can prepare endlessly and still avoid the one thing that creates movement. Nothing changes until something shifts. In systems, this isn't controversial. A design that never deploys doesn't matter. A flawless plan that never runs is worthless. It produces nothing. An unshipped system is functionally the same as no system at all. Production is where the truth lives. It shows you what holds when energy drops. It shows you what breaks under pressure. It shows you which ideas were real and which ones only sounded good in your head. That's why this entire book keeps circling back to the same point. Not motivation, not intensity, not hype. Something that runs. A system that survives imperfect days. A system that can handle load without constant babysitting. A system with guardrails and failbacks when focus slips and emotions spike. A system that doesn't collapse the first time life stops cooperating. Eventually, refinement turns into avoidance. Another tweak, another rule, another adjustment to something that hasn't even gone live yet. Everything feels busy. Nothing is real. Shipping doesn't mean finished. It means functional. It's the moment you decide this is good enough to run and let reality respond. Once that happens, the feedback shows up automatically. Patterns will reveal themselves. Defaults become obvious. Weak spots will stop hiding. That is not failure. That's information that you're not going to get any other way. Here's where most people get it really twisted. They think the goal is arrival. They think it's getting there. The moment that everything clicks and stays clean forever. But systems don't work like that. They're living things. They're maintained. They're patched. They progress. They're secured and adjusted as conditions change. The win was never building the best system. The win was building one that actually exists. One that runs when you're tired. one that runs when you're distracted, one that still runs when motivation goes missing. Because life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It applies pressure whether you've prepared or not. So ship something, not perfectly, not eventually, now. Ship the routine that survives chaos. Ship the boundaries that hold when the day gets loud. Ship the fallback plan for bad days. Ship the rules that don't change just because emotions do. Then step back and let the systems do what it was designed to do. Because clarity isn't born from thinking harder, it's earned by running something real and letting reality shape it. If it's not running in production, it doesn't exist.